First of all, it all started in 1884. Milwaukee is about to see the birth of a new institution. Milwaukee Protestant Home for the Aged was about to open with the intent of caring for the housing needs of low-income, retired Protestant women. The good Protestant women of Milwaukee met at Plymouth Congregational Church on Van Buren Street in September of 1884. Their goal was to assist gentle but unfortunate aged people. The board of Milwaukee Protestant Home for the Aged was all women and would stay so for over 100 years. The members of Milwaukee Protestant Home paid the enormous sum of $1 a year to be a member of the organization, or if you were young enough and thought you could take advantage of it, it was $25 for a lifetime membership. That dues sustained the organization for quite a while. As you can see, this is an extremely determined group of women. You wouldn't want to run into them in a dark alley someday. Their purses were awful heavy. The initial occupant was a woman by the name of Elizabeth Thomas. She was a retired school teacher. She was facing eviction from her one-room apartment. What we need to remember is that there was no safety net in 1884. Social Security didn't exist until 1935, and Title 19 nursing homes didn't come into being for another 30 years. We also have to remember that it's only 20 years since the most catastrophic war in America's history in terms of casualties, the Civil War. Over 600,000 men died, leaving widows and children behind with little means of support. Milwaukee Protestant Home quickly outgrew their original residence at 710 North Van Buren Street. Initially, they occupied half the building. After that, they rented the entire building, but they quickly understood by 1892 that they needed a bigger facility. The city donated an acre for a home from a parcel of land acquired from James Murray. You might be familiar with Murray Avenue in Milwaukee. Murray sold 40 acres of woodland to Milwaukee for $10 an acre. Even at that time, $10 an acre was essentially a gift, and it was for charitable purposes only. Portions of that parcel were used for the Industrial School for Girls, the Protestant Orphans Asylum, and St. Rose's Orphan Asylum, and land that ultimately would be turned into St. Mary's Hospital. The Milwaukee Protestant Home was built on 1.7 acres of the remaining land by Henry C. Koch, who had also been an architect for the Industrial Schools for Girls with a capacity of 240. What you're looking at right here is you're standing on approximately Lake Boulevard, and you're looking west towards Prospect Avenue. That is, in fact, the Industrial School for Girls in the background. I know it kind of looks like a painting or a lithograph, but that's an actual photograph from the UWM archives. Koch ended up designing a building for the Milwaukee Protestant Home that was considered Victorian Gothic in the Chateau-esque style of architecture, resembling a castle. Amenities included interior spaciousness, corner tower spires, and a large porch. Moving from the duplex on Van Buren to our current home allowed for occupancy to increase to 50 residents plus staff. The structure was built for an amazing sum of $32,553. Donations provided the bulk of the revenue. Two of the original donors were Milwaukee power brokers, Alexander Mitchell and John Plankington. You might be familiar with Alexander Mitchell's home at this time as well. It's now known as the Wisconsin Club on Wisconsin Avenue. That was the home of Alexander Mitchell at the time. By 1896, the board realized that they had outgrown the original structure yet again, and again retained the services of Henry Koch, who who was assisted by Herman Esser, and they built an addition. The Francis Hinton addition to the north of the original structure is added using a contribution from Mr. and Mrs. John Hinton. The naming rights memorialize their son Francis, who had passed away several decades earlier while in Europe. The new addition increased capacity to 90 residents and provided for dormitory living space and with kitchenettes and shared bathrooms. Tiffany stained glass windows in the north stairwell commemorate the naming of the addition, and Cyril Kolnick wrought iron handrails add a touch of elegance. Now, you all know Tiffany from New York. This is, in fact, a relative of that Tiffany. These windows were not imported from New York. There was a local branch of Tiffany's right here in Milwaukee at that time. Milwaukee Protestant Home recognized the need to plan for future expansion, and in 1910, the next major move was made. The organization traded land to the city of Milwaukee on the east side of the campus, which later became Gilman Corner Park. Gilman at that time was a major landowner, and he was the original subdivider of parcels in this section of the east side of the city of Milwaukee. He originally came from the East Coast and came to Milwaukee. In his honor, Gilman Corner Park was named. The city in return gave Milwaukee Protestant Home land which eventually became the south and the west border of the property. Milwaukee Protestant Home now own land all the way to Prospect Avenue, giving them time and opportunity to plan the next phase expansion. That expansion occurred in 1926 when the South Addition was built on the land the organization acquired from the city 16 years earlier. Architect Fitzhugh Scott remarkably maintained the architectural integrity of the original building, making the South Addition virtually indistinguishable from the stylistically out-of-fashion original construction. This new addition brought the potential occupancy of Milwaukee Protestant Home to 140. Once again, philanthropy played a major role in the financing for the South Addition, as Edmund J. and Cecilia Dawes Lindsay provided a donation of $25,000 to spearhead the financing. The Lindsay contribution specifically was used for the addition of a new auditorium for the entertainment of residents. For those of you who are interested, I cannot swear to that. But I can tell you that in doing research, I have found Edmund and Cecilia Dawes, for whom Edmund Dawes was an editor for the Milwaukee Sentinel. And I believe it to be the same gentleman. And that's where the source of their financial well-being came from. In honor of the donation from the Lindsays, the auditorium was named Lindsay Auditorium, featured a large stage and theater-style seating. The 1926 expansion also created a hospital and occupational therapy department, which actually was one of the very first in the nation.
Was that where Lindsay Hall is now?
No. It actually, do any of you know where Sean's office is?
Yeah.
Lindsay Auditorium used to branch off from that. And when things were demolished to create the contemporary building right now, that was removed at that point in time. So it actually was a little bit to the west of here, and then it branched off from what we now know as the historic building. Milwaukee Protestant Home remained relatively stable for the next 20 years, with the most significant new issue being that it was granted 501c3 status from the IRS. Conditional approval for this new status was granted in 1942, and after a 5-year period during which the IRS reviewed the activities of the finances of the organization, permanent status was granted in 1947. The IRS nonprofit status remains in effect to this day, and we are chartered under Section 501c3 of the IRS Code, and we are also listed as a public charity under Section 509 A2 of the IRS code. There will be a quiz on this after a while. I hope you're taking notes. The designation means that Milwaukee Protestant Home does not pay federal income tax, and it also means that donors to Milwaukee Protestant Home may deduct their donations to Milwaukee Protestant Home, subject to IRS guidelines. It was at this time that another significant contribution came to Milwaukee Protestant Home. In 1945, Blanche Yale donated the funds to create the Yale Building. The Yale Building did not go up immediately. It took until 1953. Mrs. Yale's vision came to fruition as land was purchased from the state of Wisconsin, and Milwaukee architect Garrett DeGelicke was hired to design the large, modern-style Yale Building. The footprint for this addition was on the west side of the campus. With the subsequent opening of the Yale wing, the resident census increased to 190. The next expansion came in 1962 and 63 when Bradford Terrace was built for Milwaukee Protestant Home by William Wenzler. It was the first sheltered living facility in the area with apartments for independent living plus hospital equivalent accommodations, which included physical therapy. Bradford Terrace created 29 independent living apartments, as well as 2 floors of it added to the convalescent center. This created an opportunity for Milwaukee Protestant Home to address the needs of long and short-term residents. On the 100th anniversary of the founding of Milwaukee Protestant Home in 1984, the site was declared a historic preservation structure by the city of Milwaukee. Milwaukee Protestant Home was already planning its next expansion. In 2000, the Water Tower Assisted Living Apartments were completed. Once again, the structure was heavily subsidized with a major contribution, this time from Patricia Emerson. A donation of $400,000 allowed for the creation of the Patricia C. Emerson Aquatic, Spa, and Wellness Center, which were added along what is now Lake Drive. The coming of the new century saw a dramatic change happening quickly at Milwaukee Protestant Home. Men were finally allowed to join the board of directors. For the first time, the Milwaukee Protestant Home began exploring its future once again. In preparation for the future, Milwaukee Protestant Home changed its name to East Castle Place in 2001. It wanted to demonstrate that all were welcome, not just Protestants. Milwaukee Protestant Home was unique in this outreach effort because Milwaukee Catholic Home retained its name. St. John's by the Lake continued to focus on Milwaukee's Episcopalian population. And of course, the Milwaukee Jewish Home was just down the road as well. Soon, all 4 campuses would be open to everyone, although the other 3 never changed their names. The name East Castle Place was selected because of the architectural stylings of Henry Koch, which reminded viewers of a castle. It also fit in well with the fact that the board was looking at expanding beyond the boundaries of East Castle Place and looking at campuses to the north, which would become New Castle, and a campus to the south, which would probably have become South Castle. That was land that was along the lakefront in the city, on a bluff, in the city of St. Francis, just across the street to the east from the high school, St. Francis High School. In anticipation of these new beginnings, the board approved the demolition of the Yale Building on our East Side campus in 2003. Ground was broken on what would soon be called the Contemporary Building, and at the same time, the original building on campus, the historic, underwent a dramatic renovation, creating fully independent living apartments and ending with the dormitory-style facilities that were prevalent in that building. In 2006, the newly renamed East Castle Place christened the Contemporary Building and the newly renovated Historic Building, adding 82 units of independent living. Included in the construction was the creation of Lindsay Hall, where we're sitting right now, the community meeting space that replaced Lindsay Auditorium. Lindsay was retained in the name in honor of the original donors for the auditorium. East Castle Place formally became a continuum of care campus, providing care for fully independent, assisted living, memory care, and finally, nursing home care. Residents could move to East Castle Place and know that their housing needs would be met no matter what the level of care was required. A subsequent renovation in 2022 renovated the assisted living units in Water Tower to fully independent living apartments, and all healthcare living units were relocated to Bradford Terrace. Floors 1 and 2 are assisted living, 3 is memory care, and 4 and 5 are rehab and skilled nursing. In 2023, East Castle Place, under its original name of Milwaukee Protestant Home for the Aged, was declared a National Historic Landmark and placed on the National Register of Historic Places by the United States Department of the Interior. As we get ready to celebrate our 140th anniversary, we want to remind all of you of what has become our tradition at East Castle Place. As we did for our 130th anniversary and our 135th anniversary, we'll be hosting a gala, this time at St. Kate's the Arts Hotel on September 14th. All are invited to join us as we celebrate this momentous milestone in our history. Why should you join us? Because we want you to have fun. We want you to be part of these pictures 5 years from now when we're celebrating our 145th anniversary. As you can see, these are photos of our residents in black tie optional attire, member of our board of directors, residents and their family, again more residents, Dick and Lavona Huxtable, and of course you've got Don there as well. Other people that have been with us for many, many years, and there we have some guy on the left just snuck into a picture. So we hope to see you all on September 14th at St. Kate's the Arts Hotel, and that's my presentation. Are there any questions I can answer for people? Thank you. Yes?
Okay, so when were men allowed to live
To
here?
live in East
Yes.
Castle Place? Well, again, as I mentioned, they joined the board of directors after the turn of the century in the 21st century. I'm not specifically aware of when men were able to join the population. I wouldn't even venture a guess. I'm just not certain. So I don't know. Yes?
You mentioned some connection to Plymouth Congregational Church. I missed that right at the beginning.
The question was Plymouth Congregational Church and what the tie was. Plymouth Congregational Church was the meeting place for the original board of directors when they decided to create Milwaukee Protestant Home. It was used as a meeting place only. That's when they moved to the duplex on Van Buren Street.
Are there particular churches that were active in really establishing?
I think it really focused on wives of major industrialists and philanthropists in the greater Milwaukee area. That's where the money came from to do it. Churches provided the residents, but the financial resources came from the philanthropic community in Milwaukee. Any other questions? You know, I wish I could go longer, but that's all I got. You know, I got you down here and I only went 18 minutes, but hopefully you enjoyed it. There you have it.
Thank you.